Welcome, welcome. This is the Enlightenment Show, and I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. This is where Chicken Soup for the Soul meets the artist way with Nancy Drew. Our guest today is Wanda Morris, author of Anywhere You Run. We're going to be chatting with her today all about her new release and a time when she ran from the unknown. Welcome, Wanda.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you here chatting about Anywhere You Run. It is December. What kind of things are you excited about this month?
Well, I am always excited about Christmas. It is my very favorite holiday of the year, and we have a lot of little traditions that we do here at my house. So it's always exciting time. Yeah.
Mhm. What's one of your favorite traditions that you like to do at your home?
Christmas Eve is a big deal around here. Big deal. I It's so funny. We all dress up in pajamas, look like pajamas, and it usually starts. Festivities start around 3 o'clock. We bake cookies, decorate cookies. Um, there's always lots of music and dancing, and you would think that I had like little ones, right? I have two kids in their 20s and a 13-year-old, and everybody is still like, what's the Christmas pajama theme this year, mommy? Which I always keep a surprise until Christmas Eve. So it's just a matter of us all getting together and just having a really good time, and then we sleep until 2 o'clock the next day.
Yes, way to go, sleeping in and bringing in the magic. Can you share with our listeners and viewers what Anywhere You Run is all about?
Sure. So, Anywhere You Run is the story. I like to describe it as a coming of age story of two young sisters who are growing up in the Jim Crow South. And unfortunately, there is a collision of sorts. Three civil rights workers are brutally murdered. One of the sisters is brutally attacked, and as a result, the two sisters take off running to different parts of the country. One heads north, one heads to a small rural town in Georgia. But what the sisters don't realize, despite their running, their secrets are not far behind them, because there's a man with some dark secrets of his own who has a really unusual motive to find the sisters, and he sets out in chase.
Hmm. What inspired you to dive into writing this story?
Mm. So I had just finished up my first book, All Her Little Secrets, and was looking around for another project to work on. And the country had just gone through the 2020 election, and there was a lot of noise about election fraud and the big lie. And I thought it would be really cool to write about the voting process in this country, but I couldn't really figure out a contemporary angle. And I started doing research on voting rights for Blacks in this country. And I thought, this might be interesting. Now, keep in mind, I've never written a historical book in my life, so that was gutsy. But I decided to take the plunge because I thought, oh, this might be an interesting way to demonstrate the parallels between what happened in 1964 and what's currently going on now in 2022.
Hmm. I love that you made that gutsy move of writing a historical fiction and having multiple POVs to really bring us into that connective piece of each of your characters on what they're feeling and going through in that moment.
Yeah, yeah. That was also another gutsy move, Lori. I've never written multiple POV either. I was like, what was I thinking? Yeah, once I was into writing the book, I was like, Wanda, like what? Um, but I did that because I think that the story and the themes that the story deals with really did demand a personal storyteller, someone who was close to the story, and could bring the reader in through what they were actually seeing and experiencing. And so that's how I came to choose multiple POV, because you actually see the story through the eyes of the two sisters as well as the man who is chasing them.
Welcome to the dark side of multiple POV. I heard that a lot from people. If you're choosing your debut to do multiple POV, are you crazy? And I'm like, probably.
Yeah, that is. Fortunately, this was not my debut, so I had at least one book under me. But nonetheless, it is still a challenging kind of process, because you want to be right there in that particular character's story. And then for me, because I was dealing with two sisters, I wanted to make sure that their respective voices were very distinct. Yeah.
Violet and Marigold are quite opposite as sisters, which I really appreciated. What did you enjoy most about both of them?
Um, I think it was that very thing that I enjoyed writing about two women who were living under the same oppressive environment, but their different approaches to it. And so writing about two sisters who were very, very different in their perspective on life was really, it was really a lot of fun, because I got to explore kind of the dark sides of both sisters. And that was really interesting for me.
Mm-hmm. I loved the concept of women moving each other forward.
Mhm.
How have you been inspired and supported by women in your own life?
Oh my gosh. I think that started from, day one, and coming into the world with a very, very strong mother who, you know, there was in her eyes, there was nothing I couldn't do. She made me believe that just because someone calls you something, that does not mean that that is the thing you are. You are what you believe. And it was because of her, instilling her strength in me that I went on and kind of used that as a roadmap to strengthen and encourage other women. And I think that that is particularly important when you have a platform in which to do it. And so every job I've ever had, every opportunity I've been given a platform, I try and use that to lift other women up. Whether it was during my days practicing as a lawyer, or even now in my career as a novelist.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Wanda's mama, and thank you, Wanda. There's something too, I love what you said of, the cycle continuing of like when one woman builds another woman, the strength within numbers of continuing to do it for next generations as well.
Right.
And it just is so beautiful and powerful.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I have a daughter, and I have tons and tons of nieces, and all these women who will come after us. I think it is so important to nurture and strengthen them, and give them voice, and give them agency, and give them power, because the world, unfortunately, the world has become much more complicated. I don't see it retreating from that. And so, all the more reason to empower young girls and young women.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, to that. Where do you feel like you belong that is home to you?
Oh, that's an excellent question, Lori. I guess whenever I am with my husband and my children, I feel like I'm home. And that doesn't necessarily mean we'd have to be in this house. Excuse me. As I mentioned, I have two kids who are in their 20s, and they both live in New York City now. One is in law school, one is working. And my house always feels just a smidge fractured when they are not here. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It just means like the house feels different. But when they come home for holidays, or my husband and I and the 13-year-old go up to New York City to spend time with them, it feels like home wherever we are, wherever our unit is. I think that would be my description of home.
I just got chills as you were talking about that. Just that essence of just togetherness and connecting. Such a magical feeling.
Yeah, indeed.
How do you think, Wanda, anywhere you run is relevant to today?
Oh, very much so. The book takes place in 1964, but to read the story and the themes that are covered in the book, I think feel eerily familiar to 2022, whether it is equity at the voting polls and voting rights, police brutality, brutality against gay and lesbian people, a woman's right to govern her own body. Interestingly enough, when I turned in this book to the publisher, because as you know, you're a writer, it's a months long process to go from finished manuscript to published book. And I turned in this book. I was writing about a woman's right to govern her own body in the book. And then by the time we published, we no longer had the right to govern our own bodies. And, I just never, when I sat down to write this story, conceived that that would have happened. I told my daughter, I had more rights when I was in my 20s than you do today, and we're in 2022. Now, how unfortunate and unrealistic is that? Each generation should be better than the last generation. So yeah, I think the themes that are covered in this book are very familiar to people. If you read some of the passages, they could very well strike you as happening today.
What would you say, Wanda, to your 13-year-old daughter or this next generation to help remind them to keep moving forward?
I always tell my daughter, my 13-year-old is my son, but I tell young women that, one, you are stronger than you think you are, that you have more power than you might even believe to conceive. And two, you need to lean into that power and that strength. Make sure that when you are in a room, people know you are there. And that's the advice I give my daughter, I give my nieces, that use that power that you have. Women are incredibly strong. I think so much of society tries to tell us that we are not. And too often girls listen to that, much to the detriment of this country. Yeah, that's what I tell young women, to lean into your power and your strength.
Is there a time in your life when someone turned on the light for you in a dark moment?
I've had lots of moments like that. Some I don't care to share because they're so personal. But I remember, interestingly enough, here's a funny moment. I had a French teacher in high school, and I was struggling. I was really, really struggling with French. And my teacher, I will never forget her. God bless you, Mrs. Borikowski, wherever you are. She told me to stay after class one day. And she said, how can I help you? And I was like, I just don't understand it. And everybody does so much better when they're, doing oral lessons of French. And I just, I don't get it. And she said, I know that you are smart enough to learn this material. She said, but I have a suggestion for you. And I was like, what? And she says, do not sit next to a young girl and her last name. I probably shouldn't call out her last name because I don't want her to feel bad, but her last name was Deschamps. Okay. She was French. Her parents were French. They sometimes spoke French in the house. And so my teacher said, do not sit next to her because I think that it shakes your confidence because she was obviously fluent. I took her suggestion and it worked. And I was like, oh my gosh. But what that taught me in that moment, because I was struggling, but it taught me that I wasn't listening to myself. I wasn't tapping into that because I was looking outside and comparing myself to someone else. And that is a really big mistake so many of us make, that we don't compare ourselves to our last big challenge. We're always comparing ourselves to someone else. And, in this industry in publishing, there's always going to be somebody who, writes a bigger book, who gets a bigger invite, who gets a bigger interview. And if you're always chasing that, you're going to be in a really, really disappointed place. But what you do is you tap into and say, I'm going to do the very best that I can. And everything else kind of falls in line with that. If you're challenging yourself, everything else seems to fall into place.
I love that. And I'm actually thinking of multiple times too in my life where 100% Wanda, we get in the moment. We don't recognize in the moment that we're comparing, but later on stepping back from it, having just that distance makes a huge difference of,
Yes.
wait a minute.
And so I always, always, always remember that story. But I love sitting beside, my friend because I liked her and we were friends. But yeah, I was comparing myself to someone who, spoke the language as a second language at home. Like, duh. Yeah, you're going to struggle, Wanda. That was a very, very important lesson about, challenging myself against myself and not other people.
When was a time that you ran from the unknown?
Ran from the unknown. I'm trying to think because I got to be honest with you. I'm at an age now where I just you know, unfortunately, I've buried both my parents. I've had losses. I've had wins. I have, you know, lost things that I thought I should have won. I won things that I didn't think I should have. So I'm at a place in my life now where I don't necessarily get afraid. I just say, what God has for me is for me. And that if I am, preparing, being kind, being a decent person, treating other people right, that all those things that God has for me will come to me. And so I don't necessarily get afraid of things. I just, you know, say, I'm here, I'm going to try this, and what happens, happens. And that's how I kind of got to this place to write this book because I was always at a place where I was talking myself out of writing. I knew I loved writing. I knew I wanted to write books, but I kept saying, oh, I can't do that. Or, I don't have enough time to do that. I'm raising kids. I have a job, this, that, and the other. And I think all of that was fear. And I think when I finally, you know, said enough and leaned into the thing that gave me joy and peace, then I have come to be in a place that I love and doing work that I love. So that one's kind of a tough one for me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for leaning into artist Wanda and bringing us these beautiful books and sharing your thoughts and voice with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Have you recognized for you, Wanda, over time with what you just said, that your life has been richer of just leaning in and growing into more of a wiser version of Wanda, maybe?
Yeah, I think, all that I've just said, I just by leaning in and tapping into that thing that gives me joy, that I'm passionate about, I have created a whole new career. I've met all these really wonderful people, including you. I have a whole new, circle of friends and, people that, um, I enjoy being with and collaborating with and sharing with. And all of that comes out of leaning into and rejecting fear, but leaning into that which you love. It took me a long time to get here and a long time to learn these lessons, which I hope people will learn from my mistakes. Do as I say, not as I do.
I remember when I was younger, like in my 20s and 30s, I thought by the time I was 40, I'm almost hitting 40, and I thought at that point, like, I just have it all figured out by the time I'm 40. And I'm like, listen here, I feel like I'm just barely starting to like really gather myself.
Oh my gosh. I tell young people that I'm like, oh, you think you got it together now? You just wait. It's going to only get better. Trust me. Oh gosh, I cringe when I think about some of the decisions I made and the things I did when I was in my 20s. But to your point, you think, I got this. I'm handling this, right?
Yeah. And moving forward.
Yes. So moving forward. Next question.
We're going to turn it to the inner child question segment. Are you ready, Wanda?
All right. We'll see.
Hey. First question. When you were a kid, were you afraid of the dark?
Yes. Very much so. I am still afraid of dark places that I am unfamiliar with. So, like walking into, I don't know, like a hotel suite that's dark. I'm kind of like, I'm a big fraidy cat when it comes to like scary movies and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yet you write thrillers, which is a fun.
I know, right? Lori, don't call me out.
I've seen it to me too, because I do as well. But like, I still have a light on in our bedroom. My husband's like, can we turn off the light? And I'm like, it's not today. Maybe tomorrow.
Today. Exactly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're right. So like, I write these thrillers. Like in my first book, All Her Little Secrets, I remember writing a scene in that book where Elise Littlejohn, who is the protagonist, is being chased through a dark office building. Let me tell you, Lori, I don't like dark office buildings. Why am I writing this scene?
She's doing it for you, Wanda, right? Like,
I hate dark office towers. And I always had to work in one, right? And, working as a lawyer, I was always working in, these dark buildings. I'm like, oh, so I can't even believe, wow, now I think about it, I can't even believe I put that scene in the book. But, yeah. Anyway.
So parking garages, shall we talk about that? Like, that's terrifying. Does that terrify you?
Yes, I hate dark, empty parking lots. And I put one in my first book. What? What is that called? Is that called writing through your fear? Maybe that's what I was
I think, yeah. For sure. Like, I can't do this yet, but my character will do it so that I
My
can have the
character.
courage to maybe get there.
There you go. There you go.
Oh man. Second question. What were some of your favorite memories as a teenager?
Oh gosh, as a teenager, I, you know what? I had this beat up old car. It was actually my father's car, and he got a new car, and he kind of fixed the old one. And I got my license when I was 16, and I was driving his old, I'll never forget, it was a Buick 225, and this thing was like long. It was like a long car. And so imagine me 60 years old driving this long black car. But my favorite memories were like picking up my girlfriends and just riding around the city in, this car that rivaled, a hearse in its length. But and then we would go and get burgers or whatever. And those were like my favorite memories from high school. Yeah.
Hmm. The driving around the city in a car
It
with
was
girlfriends.
weird because I
Yeah.
felt such freedom. I felt
Mhm.
like, I was kind of like a grown up, like I learned my way around the city. And so now it's driving around the city. And yeah, it made me feel it was a very freeing time. Yeah.
Mhm. What did you usually like to go get as far as food goes?
There was this restaurant that was not too far from my school, and it was a burger restaurant. I can't remember the name of it now. But I remember what I used to order. I used to always get the Dave's special, which was a hamburger with Swiss cheese, mushrooms, caramelized onions,
Ooh.
um, and fries on the side. I always got the same thing. My girlfriends would be like, try something different. There are like 21 different burgers on here. It's like, nope, always the Dave's special. Yes.
That sounds like a patty melt kind of, but
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And they, smashed these buns and let all that stuff kind of melt and ooze together. Good stuff.
You said caramelized onions, and I was like, you got me.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Third question. What is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried, or you've just tried?
Ooh, oddest combination. Um, well, gosh, I probably shouldn't be telling your listeners this, but I have been trying to lose a bit of weight. And so the other morning I had boiled eggs with a little sprinkle of cayenne pepper and cottage cheese.
Ooh.
And then I threw some Spanish olives in there on the side, and it was yummy. But I never would have thought to put those things together as a breakfast item. But I was getting all my protein, and I was like, yeah, I just need to throw something on. And I love olives. I love all kinds of
Mhm.
olives. So I threw some olives on. And the next day I tried it again, but I tried it with Kalamata olives, and that was okay. I like the Spanish olives
Ooh.
because they're a little saltier.
I love olives too. It just kind of like is a zest, the garnish.
Exactly, exactly. That's exactly what I was looking for. Yes,
Mhm.
you should try it. It's good.
That sounds
Deviled eggs
really
with cayenne
delightful.
pepper. Mhm, good.
Okay. When you come up with a name for it, let us know. And anyone who wants to try that dish with me, I'm going to go make that today. And we'll let Wanda know.
Yes, please.
Before we end today, Wanda, can you share with our listeners and viewers what living a creatively abundant life means to you?
Wow. Um, you know, I don't even know how to encapsulate in words the joy that I feel now that I get to do this every day. This room that I sit in, this is where I write, and it is small. Um, much smaller than some of the legal offices I've worked in my life. And I cannot tell you what a joy it is to wake up every morning and get to come to this desk and this room and create characters and stories that, not only speak to me, that are important to me, but I've come to find out are important to other people. Like I wrote All Her Little Secrets out of a desire to kind of explain what some aspect of my life was like as a Black female working in corporate America. And after that book was published, I got so many people who told me that happened to me, or I worked with someone like that, and I felt seen in your book. That is an indescribable joy. And so, you know, to live creatively and abundantly means to walk in that purpose for which you've been placed on earth. And I am blessed to do that every day.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Wanda. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Such a joy. So much joy. Mwah! Thank you so much, Lori.
You're so welcome. Where can our listeners and viewers find you if they have any questions for you after the show or want to find your books?
Absolutely. You can find me on my website, which is wandamorriswrites.com. And I'm also on all the platforms. I'm on Twitter as WandaMo14. I'm on Facebook as Wanda Morris Writer. And I'm on Instagram as Wanda Mo Writes. So please reach out to me. If you like my books, let me know. If you don't, keep it to yourself. Please reach out. I love hearing from people.
Thank you so much, Wanda. And thank you for all that watched live and will watch on the replay. Remember, as you go about the rest of your week, to find the things that are working for you. You are the creator of your own story. What steps will you take next? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wanda. Have a beautiful rest of your week.
Thank you so much, Lori. Thank you for having me. Take care, everyone.